Okay, this is not the covering material that is in your kit, so please bear that in mind. It's just I don't have the heavy plastic here, so what you have will be exponentially easier to work with. This is petroleum jelly, Vaseline, whatever you want to call it. What I'm going to do is on the side, so these braces are on this side, so on this top side, I'm going to smear the petroleum jelly all the way around here. Now, if you can see I've got this stuff like bubbling up here because I want a very thick coat of it. And there we go. So I'll set that aside for a moment. Now, like I said, the covering material that you'll be using is a much heavier grade than this stuff. If I can get that to come off of my hands or not, just stick someplace else. So you want a clean, smooth surface, which is basically everything that this is not. It slipped off on there too. Brilliant. So this is a material that's called polymicrofilm, so it's very, very thin. This out. And you want to roll out, in your case, you're going to roll out enough just that you can fit it crosswise like this. But if you notice, this film is narrower than that, so I'm going to have to go across this way. Let me steer you over like that. So I'm going to have to lay it down like so. But before you do that, get all the petroleum jelly off of your hands because it makes the film sticky and it adds weight. You're going to take your film here and you're going to do something called crinkling it. So gather the film together and you very gently just take it and you wad it up. You wad it up into a gentle little ball here and you just massage it. Now your film, it's going to be a little stronger, so it's fairly easy to do this. And you just keep doing that, and you keep wadding it up into a tiny little ball. I know this sounds completely counterintuitive, but it's very important that you do this because it allows you to get a very, very, very good covering job on your airplane. Actually did not crinkle up enough of it because the film keeps trying to roll up on me. So let's do that again then. Alright, so what's important is you're going to take this film and you are going to stretch it out nice and smooth. And there is a video link in the description below for this segment of your build of me doing this with much thinner film, showing frankly quite a bit more detail than we're going to show here. So I highly recommend you watch that video because it is quite comprehensive of this topic. Now that you've got your film spread out, I'm just going to drop this on here, and like I said, you'll orient it this way because your film is 15 inches across. This is not. And then you just gently run a sharp, brand new razor blade across, which naturally this is not. And that's why the film is tearing instead of cutting. Be right back. I actually have to get a new blade. Okay, so let's try this with a nice new blade. You don't actually have to cut the film, you just have to score it. I'm going to save my excess and stick it in the end of the spool. Same thing there. Okay, so now we've got this film adhered. We'll go ahead and press it down all around and lift it up off the table. And now if there are any loose spots, you can just go around here and you can easily tighten these up. You don't need the film to be super tight. You just don't want it to be real saggy here, because then you won't get good airfoil shape. So it does pay to take your time here and get this right. Now, as you can see, it has that really nice sheen to it. Now your film won't have the same sheen because this is a thinner film. This is all I have on hand at the moment. So, the next thing you're going to do, if you notice this frame is wide enough that you're going to cover your wing and your stab at the same time, as you can see there. We're going to use a product called 3M Super 77. This is what I use. Look in the video that we have linked below on covering, and you'll see how I do this. I'm not going to show this on video. It's dark outside and this is messy anyway. So I will be back once I've got that done. So what I'm doing is I'm spraying it on the top surface of my wing and on my stab. Okay, so what we have now, let me get this covering out of the way for the moment. We have these sprayed down. Now I've sprayed them much more heavily than we did in the video that I did specifically on covering. Because you're using heavier surfaces, you have a high minimum weight, so there's not as much of a penalty for putting all that adhesive on there. And the other thing is, you're using a thicker covering material, so it needs a little more adhesive to hold it on. Now I've got these spaced about 1/2 inch apart, like so. They're very nice and parallel. And we can, holding the film upside down, just make sure that it fits within the bounds of everything. You can see that it does. So now we're going to turn it over, and you want to get this right the first time. So you carefully lower this down onto those flying surfaces like that. And now, ideally, you'll take a very soft paintbrush and run around the first time to get the film to attach. There are lots and lots of different ways to do that. So I'm just running a clean finger over it right now, and that's what you should ultimately do anyway. Even if you go around with a paintbrush, afterwards come back around with your finger and press the film down. And notice I'm just rubbing it over. I don't want to deform my ribs or anything like that. So you want to take a very, very soft touch. Now there are a few places I can't get to back in here, so I'm going to take a piece of balsa that doesn't have any glue residue or anything like that. And make sure the film is tacked down thoroughly. And remember, you've got these rounded leading and trailing edges, so I'm going to tack the film down over that as well. And now at this point you can take that nice sharp new razor blade and you just run it along here. And it slices nicely through the film. You do not want to use a soldering iron like what we used in the other video, and the reason for that is the thicker film that you're going to be using shrinks really dramatically when you hit it with a soldering iron, and it will actually deform your flying surfaces. So we're just dragging this razor blade along. It's whipping right through everything. And so we've got the stab done. We get the wingtips here. We'll have to flip this over to get the back section there. So we cut this free, and we'll come over here and do the same thing. And with that, you've got a beautiful covering job. So at this point we can go ahead and we'll take a break here, and then we'll assemble the wingtip. Okay, so now we're going to cut out 4 of these tip plates. And you will note these tip plates are all identical. And so all we have to do is glue those like so. Now, very important that you notice there's more curvature of this wing up here than back here. This is the front. And so the wingtips go like that. Let me clear the others out. There we go. They go like that. They do not go that way. They go this way. So we're going to take this guy. We're going to put some glue on the end here. You can go real light with this, and I'm using CA. I would actually recommend you use the Sigment. And now what we're going to do, we're going to line up the back, trailing edge to leading edge, like that. So this wingtip I didn't get it on perfectly, but it is a straight line. Nope, I really didn't get it on perfectly. There we go. So it's a straight line from the bottom of the leading edge to the bottom of the leading edge to the bottom of the trailing edge, and to stay within. It's still not sticking. It's sticking to me, but it's not sticking to the wingtip. There we go. So we want that part to be towed in slightly. There we go. We want this to be straight up and down relative to the wing. You can actually, I mean, if you're not using CA, you can just set this down and then have something straight vertical, like, for example, glue bottle to jig it against. And I'm going to hit this with just a tiny bit more of my glue. And you'll repeat that for the other side. Okay, now, for your stab, you'll notice very subtly there's slightly more curvature here than here. This is the leading edge, so we again will orient like so. Okay, at this point we have our wing and our stab together with cute little wing tips, like so. Now, one thing that is very important is that you make sure on the wing that these are straight up and down, because actually your compliance with the rules depends upon that. Because if they toe out any, you're going to go overspan. And that's something else you will want to check, is make sure you're within the wing chord limits. Measure this very carefully to make sure that no swelling of the wood or anything has caused you to go outside of the rules on that. But there you have it. So at this point you're ready to start adding tissue tubes and whatnot. So we'll come back in a minute and we'll put those on. Now, if you remember, we have some leftover balsa sticks from making our wing spars. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut those to size for wing and stab posts. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make my wing posts. And so I'm going to size one of the, your wing posts are supposed to be 1.5 inches, and if you refer to the drawings, you'll see that. I'm actually, I'm going to use this as my front wing post at 1.5 inches, and then I'm going to make my rear wing post actually 1/8 of an inch less than that, so 1 3/8 inches. So if you look closely at this, I cut that one wrong. Let me recheck that. Make sure I've got everything. Okay, there we go. There we go. Much better. All right. So you can see there's a height difference. And I'll explain what the deal is with that in just a minute. For the stab, the posts are 3/4 of an inch, so 0.75 inches. And we're just going to make those both same size. We'll set those up. Now take your tissue tube material, and this should friction fit very tightly over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to very carefully, we're going to punch into this, we're going to cut in there, and you're going to make these about 1/4 of an inch tall. Let me make sure I'm telling you. Yeah, make them 3/8 of an inch. It'll be plenty. And you're going to make 4 of these. I'll be back once we're done cutting them. Okay, now we have all of those in there. We're going to take our wing posts. You may have to sand these a little bit round, but they should just slip right over this. So you can see how I've got that on there. Slide this on. Now this is the part where you have to be very, very careful. We're going to take the tall post, so this one, and we're going to glue it to the leading edge of this wing at the center rib, right in the middle of that tube. So what I want to carefully do is I want to carefully put some glue on that, a dab of glue, without getting it on the ends of the tube. That's very important because you don't want to glue the tube in. And now you want to make sure, let's see there, that that post is straight up and down on there. You'll probably have to hit it with CA accelerator or something, because you've got that 3M77 residue, and that actually retards the hardening of the glue. In fact, I'm going to have to pause the video and I'm going to have to go get mine, because it's definitely going slow. Alright, so I'm going to hit this with some CA accelerator. And now it will stay put. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing at the back. The way I'm going to do it this time, I'm going to play it smart. Put my dab of glue right here. And you should be very careful doing this because you only get one try when you do this. I'm going to put accelerator on that post, and now I'm going to try and show you what I'm doing here. I'm lining these up to where they're exactly parallel, hitting that on there, and now, except I didn't get it on the part where the accelerator was. It's not doing it. But you see, you hold them exactly parallel. Or attempt to. There we go. And you also want them parallel in that direction. You know, there we go. Now, at this point, those are strong enough. We can go ahead and put them on the fuselage here. We're going to measure 2.5 inches back, not from the front of the bearing, but from the front of the motor stick. I don't have my pen handy, so I'm just going to put a very slight score line right here. And so that's where the back of the front post will go. So we'll take that, flip this guy around, and I'm just going to glue that on there. Like that, straight up and down. Oh. Okay, you didn't see that. We'll come back in a minute after I've fixed the mess I've made. Okay, we're back. Now, instead of marking for the trailing edge, we're just going to push it down to where the post is level with the bottom of the motor stick here. We'll just glue it in place like that. So I'm going to lift it up, stick the glue on, and my goal is to pull this flush with my motor stick and be careful to make sure that the wing spars, as you see them there, here and here, are parallel. Okay, now at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to carefully slide our wing back off. Because it is very precarious at this point. What we want to do, we've got these gussets, and so I'm going to add gussets here. And so we end up with this result right here. Do the same thing on the front one. And so you get that. You don't want to you want to make sure those are thoroughly dried before you put them back on so that you don't get your wing glued in place, because that's a critical adjustment for you to have. So now we have our wing all done. Now for the stab, we're going to do the same thing we did. With the wing, except both posts are exactly the same. So that part's cool. The other cool part, I don't know if it's cool or not, is on the wing, you mounted your posts down like so. On the stab, we mount them facing upwards. So I'll be right back after those are glued. Okay, at this point we have this arrangement. I've already installed the gussets and everything, so that's what we end up with. And this, notice we glued the wing on the left side of the fuselage. We're going to do the same thing with the stab. So we're going to install our stab like so on the left side of the fuselage. Like that. I'm sorry, it doesn't all fit in the camera frame. Again, we're being careful to avoid getting glue into our tissue tubes, and one way to guarantee that is to assemble this upside down. And what I've done is I have glued these so they're flush on the top of the tail rim. And so now, at this point, your airframe is completed, and all you have to do at this point to have a flyable airplane is build out your propeller. So there's one thing I want to show you here. If I can get my paws out of the way. If you notice, this side of the stab is higher relative to the wing than this side, and that's not what you want. You want this side to be higher. So we're going to grab the fuselage like right here, and we're just going to twist it a little bit. Don't twist enough that it breaks. But now, if you look, you see that difference? And that's about enough. That may be a little too much. But that will